The passage of the Build Back Better Act, the $3.5 trillion reconciliation bill, which could provide social programs and infrastructure unseen in generations, still rests on one guy. No, not Joe Biden, Senator Joe Manchin. Yes, and this week, President Joe Biden reportedly met with Senator Joe Manchin and they discussed the bill. Was the president successful in convincing Manchin? According to sources familiar with the discussion, no. Biden explained to Manchin that his opposition could imperil the $1.2 trillion bipartisan infrastructure bill. Remember, this is the one that Manchin was all excited about, the one that Republicans support. Biden's analysis did little to persuade Manchin to raise his top line. Manchin held his position and appears willing to let the bipartisan bill hang in the balance, given his entrenched opposition to many of the specific proposals in the $3.5 trillion spending package. Okay, remember, this is the $3.5 trillion spending packages that has things around climate change, right? Home care workers, reducing the cost of big pharma and pharmaceuticals, in addition to a lot of things. And Manchin has been skirting the number. What's the number? How much? 3.5 trillion, okay? What do you think? And here he is with Dana Bash recently, once again, very not specific about the number.
Can you be specific? Okay, let's talk about the dollar sign.
Yeah.
Do you have a specific number in mind?
Here's a number you should be getting to. First of all, I have agreed to get on to the reconciliation because that's the time for us to make financial adjustments and changes. I thought the 2017 tax code and tax law, the way it was changed, was very unfair, and it was weighted to the wealthy.
So what's the number?
And the bottom line is, what the number would be, what's going to be competitive in our tax code. I believe that the corporate rate should be at 25, not 21.
But what's the overall number for the budget bill?
I think that you're going to have to look at it and find out what you're able to do through a reasonable, responsible way.
So then how do you know that it's not 3.5?
It's going to be at 1.5. We don't know where it's going to be.
So you think ballpark 1.5?
It's not going to be at 3.5, I can assure you. But with that, whatever it is, once you have a competitive tax code that you can compete globally, and then you should look at what the need is. What's the urgency and the need that we have?
And I want to get to that, but just because this is the thing that people consume. Do you have a ceiling?
My ceiling is this: the need of the American people, and for us to basically take in consideration inflation. No one's concerned about the debt. You know, our debt as of Friday was $28.7.5 trillion. And we're not even talking about that. No one's talking.
So you just said 1.5. It sounds like 1.5 trillion.
I'm just saying that basically, well, I've looked at the numbers. If we have a competitive tax code from a non-competitive, it doesn't help the working person that was done in 2017. That's in the 1.5 range, okay? If that's where it is, shouldn't you be looking at what does it take now to meet the urgent needs that we haven't already met?
I'm so sorry you had to watch that. That was like 5 different answers and non-answers really. But before I toss it over to the panel, I'm very excited. This is obviously not the first time that Manchin and Biden have spoken about Manchin's resistance to a lot of Biden's plans, and specifically the progressive parts of his plans. Remember back in the $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan, right? The American Families Plan. Manchin held that up too. And in March, Biden got on the phone with Biden's $1.9 trillion COVID relief package in danger of failing. He called Manchin and told him, if you don't come along, you're really effing me, according to a new book by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa. And remember, Manchin eventually did vote for that bill, except not without taking away $100 from the weekly unemployment benefits. So instead of $400, it was $300, and lowered the federal subsidy, or lowered the means testing. So raised the bar on how much money you had to make in order to qualify for the stimulus checks. You know, just as he does. But what do you think about this sort of grand tussle? Here's Biden, here's the president, and here is the senator, a Democratic senator, who should be voting along with his president and is not. Senator Turner.
I mean, Francesca, especially on something like this, he's talking about the needs of the American people. Let's talk about those needs. That this bill does, in many ways, as you laid out, address the needs. And the 3.5 trillion is already the compromise position. You know, this is lunacy, and it is very clear who the president of the United States is in this instance. And his name is Joe Manchin. Very, very clear. You have the real president, because I'll call Senator Joe Manchin, the shadow president, asking you to do this. And you know what? These corporatist Democrats who are concerned about progressives holding up the agenda. Let's talk about the shadow president, Joe Manchin. And then, the article talks about how, but it was a cordial, it was a friendly. It was a friendly conversation. How friendly can that conversation be when you have Joe Manchin standing in the way of this kind of progress? I think back to President Lyndon Baines Johnson. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, had some racist tendencies, being a son of the South. But I tell you what, he knew how to wield that power. And because he knew how to wield power, it did create the not just the genesis of, because he was the VP of President Kennedy, but under President Lyndon B. Johnson's leadership, we did get the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act at a time where it was even more tumultuous, or maybe equally as tumultuous in a partisan way as it is now, relatively speaking, in the 1960s. Imagine what he had to do and the type of power he had to wield to get something like that done. You fast forward to 2021, and we letting Senator Joe Manchin from West Virginia dictate whether or not the American people can get $3.5 trillion worth of soft infrastructure and hard infrastructure at a time when the needs are really great. Give me a break. Please, somebody primary this man, run against this man. He needs to go on over there and be a real Republican, because that's what he is. Stop. He's not even Republican light. Hell, he's doing the Republicans' bidding and the bidding of big money interests. He don't care about the American people, because if he did, he would sign on to this bill.
So on the LBJ point, you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I really wonder if these politicians are this bad at their job. Is the reporting really accurate? Because if I was going to go into a meeting with Joe Manchin and I really need him to come along on this, I would have a number of carrots and sticks prepared, and I would say, hey, listen, if you vote for it, we'll slip this into the bill to get more XYZ to West Virginia. That's politics. There's nothing wrong with that. I would also have a number of sticks prepared. Hey, if you don't go along with it, here are going to be the consequences. Saying, listen, Joe, hey, it's your call. You're the senator. You make any decision you like, but I am going to make my own decisions, and these are the consequences that will flow. And if the meeting doesn't work out, I would have launched one of those rockets at least right afterwards to let him know I'm not playing and we're very serious about this. If Joe Biden called him into the White House just to try to convince him verbally, that is incredibly weak sauce. That's not gonna do it. I mean, look at all this hilarious non-politics. But he got called into the White House. Who cares? I mean, Joe Manchin's making millions of dollars or bringing it into his campaign through the corporate donors that are making him stop this bill. He doesn't care about having tea and crumpets at the White House. And they made it seem like on the first time around, Manchin finally gave in because Joe Biden used a curse word. No, that's not how power dynamics works. So either Axios is, and this is true of a lot of mainstream media, doing a kind of a silly version of this kabuki theater and not telling you what's actually happening, or it's actually incredibly possible and maybe even more likely that Joe Biden and the rest of them don't really have any idea how to do actual power politics. And they keep thinking they're gonna beseech Manchin or the Republicans. At the end of the Axios article, they talked about how, well, Biden's plan to reach out to Republicans is not going so well in the Senate. Really? Are we still having that silly conversation? Right now, Mitch McConnell is saying, we're not even gonna raise the debt ceiling. We're gonna completely shut down the government, blow the whole thing up. Hawley and Cruz are blocking every Senate confirmation. You didn't know that was gonna happen? If Joe Biden's being earnest, then the story is way worse, because it's amazing how clueless he is about what's happening in Washington.
That's so true.
I mean, he served as the vice president under President Barack Obama, and the Republicans did every absolute thing that they could do. Hell, they even said what we are intending to do is make him a one-term president. I mean, they declared that right away and did everything that they could to make that declaration come true. They were not successful, but I'll tell you something about these Republicans. They clear about their agenda, and the Democrats need to get clear about their agenda and whose side they are on. What difference does we ask the American people, give us the White House, check. Give us the Senate, check. Help us keep the House of Representatives, check, 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 and check. And then what do they get in return? A whole bunch of nonsense is going on. Well, I don't hear Manchin talk about the billions of dollars a month that is paid, in Pentagon spending. Jesus, people, Francesca, I can't take it. I'm gonna be calling on Jesus.
I wish I could be there to fan you a little bit throughout this. It is quite enraging. I mean, like, I don't know. Did he call him a dog-faced pony soldier? Was he as mean to him as he was to Corn Pop? We will never know. What kind of snacks were laid out? What does, how does Manchin like his Twinkies?
I like the though, I do. I'm one for that. Let's do that. It's funny how people say that. I kind of got grilled about some choice words I use. But anyway, yeah, give a good cussing out and make sure there's some consequences behind them cuss words. That's what we need.
I mean, one thing, Cenk, you mentioned no carrots, no sticks in that negotiation, or so far has been reported. It seems like Joe Manchin has all the carrots he needs, because one of the things that the reporters did not mention are all the influences and all the money and all of the conflicts of interest that Joe Manchin and his family have currently and have had in the past. So we already know about Joe Manchin's daughter, who used to be the head of the drug company Mylan, that they were responsible for jacking up the price of EpiPen. Right, so already there's some ties in there. How do you think he's going to weigh in on dropping the prices on pharmaceuticals? But this is from Robert Reich, who writes on Twitter, in case you missed it, Joe Manchin founded 2 coal companies in the 1980s, which today are led by his son. His family's fortune relies on allowing the fossil fuel industry to keep wreaking havoc on our planet. And of course, that's backed up by an article. This is from Vice. According to most recent financial disclosures, Manchin gained $492,000 last year due to his non-public shares in a coal company called Enersystems, which records show is a contractor for a power plant in the state's north that burns waste coal. Meanwhile, Manchin's 2020 income for being a senator was $174,000. Now, part of that $3.5 trillion is ending coal, is transitioning away from dirty fossil fuels, right? But here's the question: has Biden put enough in there for West Virginia, right? I mean, and this is real. Like, part of this is real. It is a just transition, as climate activists have talked about, right? As I know, Nina Turner, you've talked about. Like, this is not about leaving coal workers and miners out to dry without jobs. It's providing, jobs in renewable energy. It's providing good union-paying jobs. That's the Green New Deal in and of itself. So that's a big question here, right? Nobody talks about that. Nobody. I mean, these are a few articles, some Robert Reich tweets. But Dana Bash isn't gonna openly ask Senator Manchin about his holdings in those coal companies.
Yeah, so I want to give the last word to our members here, because they made a couple of really great points. It follows up with what Francesca's saying perfectly, and what Nina said earlier. Approval wrote in, if Joe Manchin's corrupt, monopolizing daughter isn't going through a perp walk, Joe Biden isn't using his full power. So guys, think about that. That's real. So if I'm the president and Manchin's saying, no, I'm gonna kill your agenda, like, okay, Joe, if you wanna roll, we can roll, because your daughter just took $30 million in a golden parachute to outsource jobs from West Virginia. Your son runs 2 coal companies. I'm sure that there's some regulations we can find in those coal companies, et cetera. Now, if you're outraged by that, go home, because you don't belong in politics. Because why are we doing this? For the ego of Joe Biden? None of the 3 of us care about the ego of Joe Biden at all. We're doing this so you can pass the bill that helps Americans. And if you're too worried about being polite to Joe Manchin, you're never gonna get the job done. Now look, threatening the financial interests of himself and his kids, you can consider that nuclear, but are we gonna pass the bill or aren't we? Are you gonna play all your cards or aren't you? So but you have you don't have to go nuclear in the beginning. There are different layers that you can do. And Roy Lehman, another one of our members, reminded me of my idea. It's funny, but Roy said, I like Cenk's idea from a couple of months ago of Biden going to West Virginia and grabbing Manchin and telling him, you can go out on the stage with me and take credit for this jobs bill, or I can go out and tell the folks of West Virginia that Joe Manchin is holding up the jobs bill that will benefit all of you West Virginians. By the way, Roy, you know where I got that idea? And thank you for writing in. I can't get enough of doing the show with our smart members who make the show possible. Anyway, Roy, I got that idea from LBJ. That's what he did. That was a trick that he did at a press conference. That's why I said Nina took the words right out of my mouth on the LBJ reference. I don't know why you wouldn't do that unless you thought the feelings of Joe Manchin are more important than all of your voters' actual jobs and wages and free, free of pollution, air, and climate change, and all of these issues that you were elected for. And I can guarantee you that that's not the case. The rest of us don't give a damn about Joe Manchin's feelings.
And he's set for the rest of his life. And so is his children and his children's children. So let's get on with the business of making sure that other people's children are set in this country. The ones that are suffering disproportionately.
How much do you need? You can't take it with you. Hello.
Hello, somebody.
Hello, somebody. And by the way, last point, West Virginia is struggling with COVID right now. I mean, they are out in front in a bad way when it comes to the number of cases in that state. What does that mean? That means people are out of work. That means people are home. That means people need sick leave. That means a whole lot of things for the working people of West Virginia, for all people of West Virginia. So it is a moment to be bold. It is a moment, look, yes, I can't wait for them to turn on him. And I hope they do, and I can't wait for Biden to really show some leadership here.
Absolutely.
West Virginia deserves so much better.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.